almost always the people who are most deranged and most psychotic are people who don't have kids at home.
We're effectively run in this country by a bunch of childless cat ladies. As a parent, you should have more power. You should have more of an ability to speak your voice in our democratic republic than people who don't have kids.
You know, I worry that it makes people more sociopathic.
I think we have to go to war against the anti-child ideology that exists in our country. The entire Democrat Party is like this childless cabal.
Okay, that was 30 seconds of J.D. Vance talking about childless people and attacking childless people and being psychopaths. That was posted by Jamie Harrison of the DNC. That's where J.D. Vance stands on family policy, I guess, you know, because he did skip the vote on the child tax credit in Washington, D.C. because he was too busy running for vice president. But does he really stand for children and child policy? Does he really stand for American families? Is he doing everything in every way possible? I mean, I don't think it does. And how do I know that? I mean, let's contrast that approach to discussing our families with the approach from VP nominee Tim Walz in a speech that he gave Tuesday here on the kickoff rally.
It's personal for me and my family. When my wife and I decided to have children, we spent years going through infertility treatments. And I remember praying every night for a call for good news. The pit in my stomach when the phone rang, and the agony when we heard that the treatments hadn't worked. So it wasn't by chance that when we welcomed our daughter into the world, we named her Hope. When Vice President and I talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make your own healthcare decisions.
You see, having families isn't black and white. Sometimes it's hard to have children. Sometimes you don't have them until you're older. You know, he's 60 years old and has young teenagers, okay? Because it took them a long time and they had to go through IVF treatment, a very private thing, to have children. So having kids is the easy part, and not the easy part, but raising them, feeding them, ensuring they grow up healthy and strong, that's where things get really tough. And that's where the two parties diverge, even from the very beginning, how to have kids. Under Republican rule, you wouldn't be able to have an IVF. They're trying to outlaw IVF, which millions of families use to have children who dream of having children. So this is where the Republicans just walk away and wash their hands of responsibility. Once that baby's born, you want you to have him, but once you do, you're on your own. Well, it's not the policy of the Democrats. And I thought it was a great time to talk about what does family-friendly policy look like? What is the difference between the two parties? And what are recent events that have shown just how different they really are? Luckily, as always, I had an expert stumble into my lap. So we're going to have that conversation with a smart guy who talks about this policy and get into what is family policy. So I'm Fred Wellman. You're on Democracy, the FP Woman, right here, wherever you get your podcast fix, and the MeidasTouch Network. Let's get on with the show. Welcome. I am still Fred Wellman, as I was, 30 seconds ago. Welcome to On Democracy with me, FP Wellman. Yeah, it's been another wild week, especially capped off with the nomination of Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, as the vice president nominee for the Democratic Party. You know, Walz has cut his teeth as a pro-family governor in about every way possible, pushing through legislation for free breakfast and lunch for kids, without any means testing for those, child tax credits. I mean, they've lifted thousands out of poverty just in his state. And it really made me think a lot about what does a positive family policy look like when you talk about our friends on the Republican side who just keep pushing strict anti-abortion laws, but they're actually removing things like barriers to child labor at the same time, right? So it's kind of hard to balance the two. So let's talk about that. I said, so they both start. I mean, they start with the idea of being pro-family, but where it goes from there is very different. So I was very fortunate to stumble onto our guest today, Justin Talbot Zorn. He's a senior advisor to the Center for Economic and Policy Research. He's a Truman National Security Fellow, an organization I'm a fan of, co-founder of a first-of-its-kind talent pipeline for congressional staffers. Recently authored a couple of op-eds touching on policy proposals that support families and their impact, as well as the interesting things about our institution. We're going to talk about that too. So the numbers tell a very different story than the talking points. So Justin, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here on Democracy.
Red, good to be here, sir. Thanks for having me.
So, I open with a set of videos highlighting the difference between like J.D. Vance's approach to families, this kind of weirdness, this creepiness kind of thing, and the Democrats. So family policy is more than just making sure people give birth, isn't it? It's more than just creating babies, isn't it?
It's more than that. It's more than that. And Vance has come under a lot of fire for the whole childless cat ladies thing. But, at the same time, he's potentially getting to something that could and should resonate with voters, as he puts it, being the party of parents, the party of kids. Mm-hmm. It's just that you got to back that up with real policy.
Yeah, and they're not, right? And the perfect example of that is the child tax credit extension. We were talking before the show. You were very involved in the process of that, and it's passing. Of course, the punchline of the story, we'll cut to the punchline, is that Vance didn't even go back to Washington to vote for it when it came to the Senate. Tell us about the child tax credit extension law or act that was just going through, had passed the House, right? And then the Senate and dying. So tell me a little bit about what that is, why that policy is important to us as a country, because it was in effect during the pandemic. I think it's such an important place to start, is what is that all about and why does it matter?
Fred, I really had a lot of hope that this policy would pass. And honestly, this was reason for hope that maybe we could do good things in this country again as a society. At the beginning of the year, it looked like we were going to have an expansion of the child tax credit. Senator Ron Wyden, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, and Jason Smith, Congressman, chair of the House Ways and Means Committee
from Missouri.
That's right, reached an agreement to pair some tax deductions for R&D spending with an expansion of the child tax credit that would really be focused on the lowest income kids. And it passed the House 357-70.
Which is a giant number in this House. Yeah, I mean, in this House, that's a giant number of people.
It's a giant number of people. And the coalition was fascinating. You had progressive groups focused on children's welfare. You had, a lot of progressive economic organizations. But really interestingly, you had a lot of pro-life, anti-abortion groups that wanted to support this thing because they wanted to be finally, demonstrating that they weren't just concerned about abortion issues. They wanted to, also say they were helping kids after they were born.
Right.
So this was a really unique coalition. And then, of course, you had business groups supporting it. So I was hopeful that we were actually going to see something that would improve the lives of kids. Center on Budget and Policy Priorities estimated that this bill would pull 500,000 children at least above the poverty line and help a whole bunch more kids who are near the poverty line. In total, it was looking like this was going to help about 16 million kids just this year, probably more after that. And it was hugely popular in terms of polling, too. 69% support. 80% of Democrats, 59% of Republicans. So this thing was really looking like it was going to pass. But when it passed the House, Chuck Grassley, senator from Iowa, said he didn't think it'd be a good idea to have this pass because it might make Biden look good. He didn't want the IRS sending out checks to families, within months of an election. So that was the sign of probably the way things were to go. And, from there, we just saw one influential Senate Republican after another start to oppose this thing.
Wow. It's a good example of placing the politics in the moment above the good of the country, as we keep seeing, and it failed. And what was involved in that? I mean, what is that? I think a lot of people heard that term, even me. What does a child tax credit extension mean? What does that actually play out in as impacting the families? How does it, what happens?
Well, I mean, the basic idea here is some families don't have enough tax liability to be able to receive essentially the tax refund that comes to families, who have kids. Yeah. And this would have expanded eligibility. So in practice, it would have meant for the average family living at or near the poverty line, $700 to $900 in tax relief. Coming in from the government, as I mentioned before, to about 16 million children in those low-income families. Wow. So this has been proven to be the most effective anti-poverty program for kids. And it would have had a real serious impact.
And we know this because we had it before. It was very effective, and it expired from the pandemic, right? I mean, when Biden first took office, it was in place and it was very successful, right?
It was in place, and it was really something that was popular with some kind of populist Republicans like J.D. Vance.
Sure.
And they looked at the numbers and they were really trying to make the case that this would be helpful for arguing that they would be pro-family.
Yeah. And he's actually tried to say that Kamala Harris is against it. Right? I mean, I've seen, if you've seen interviews, he's saying, oh, she's against the child tax credit. Of course, JD's party killed it, and he didn't even go back to Washington to kill it. He didn't even show up in Washington to put it away. So it is a popular bill, and it did lift hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty in our country, and it was successful, but they decided to pass on it. And it's something I get to a lot, which is, look, you can't just say you're pro-family and then not do anything about it. And I guess it brings us the next piece of that, which is now we've got this dichotomy, right? We've got J.D. Vance's obsession with making babies and saying he's pro-family. And then now we've got VP nominee Tim Walz, who not only was a great congressman, especially for veterans, by the way, but even more so as the agenda he's put into his state to make, to help raise kids up, to make kids better. A lot of that comes from his experience as a teacher, right? He's got a number of policies. Can you talk a little bit about what Tim Walz has done in Minnesota that is pro-family policy and those impacts?
For sure. Yeah. He's been talking a lot about his experience just supervising the school lunchroom.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And of course, those
why lost all his hair, right?
Exactly. That's how you lose some hair, get some gray hairs. So that's really, where the rubber meets the road, the school lunchroom. And I love the way he's talking about his own personal experience in that way to explain how he's championed policies now that they have a trifecta in the legislature, Democrats in Minnesota, not just including the child tax credit, but including universal school lunch, for example. Mm-hmm. He came under some fire for that, saying that, having universal free school lunch really is giving money and support to some families who don't need it. But he's building his whole argument there again on this personal experience he has supervising the lunchroom and seeing the stigma of some kids with a different colored lunch ticket because they're on free or reduced lunch. Yeah. We're just seeing the benefits overall when everyone has buy-in to a program like universal free lunch. So I love that he's talking from personal experience from these issues. And I love that he's immediately jumping right in and trying to re-own this issue that Republicans, J.D. Vance, have been trying to take: family values, kids, parents.
Yeah. And paid family leave is a part of that as well in Minnesota, isn't it?
It's a big part of it. Yeah. Child tax credit, paid family leave.
And how is the child tax credit implemented there?
It's similar, but just applying to state taxes rather than federal taxes. Yeah. And, and he's been really active in this debate. I mean, you mentioned before the impact of those tax credits federally. He's been talking very articulately, very passionately about how effective the child tax credit was as a federal policy. I mean, in 2018 or so, during the Trump years, child poverty in America stood above 13%. Yeah. And then when that CTC was enacted around COVID time, it fell to around 5%. I think it was 5.2%. Wow. And then after it expired in 2022, it rose back up above 12%. Wow. So you could see this child tax credit, as simple as it seems, just this tax refund. It is an extraordinarily effective anti-poverty program. And that means it's an extraordinarily effective program for improving family life in this country.
Is the argument the cost of it? Because, I mean, if they're already poverty families, we're not getting taxes out of it anyway, are we? I mean, it seems like it's in a lot of ways sort of a low-cost approach to this, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, the argument that Mike Crapo, who's the ranking Republican in the Senate on the Finance Committee, has made against this is against something that's called the look back provision, which is a part of the bill that says that families could use their income from the prior year or 2 years ago as the basis for whether they're eligible for this. Yeah. So Crapo's been saying that's a disincentive to work. The whole point is to provide some flexibility, if people have differentials in their income year to year. But Crapo's been saying that's a disincentive to work, which is just a crazy argument if you think about it. No one is going to decide whether they work or not in order to get a $700, $900 tax refund. Right. No one's going to build their whole life around that. Right. So, I think what you're seeing here, Fred, is a really fundamental tension within the Republican Party. On one hand, you have people who are bringing forward this populist rhetoric like J.D. Vance, trying to make the case that that the old kind of Reaganomics fiscal orthodoxy of the Republican Party is a thing of the past, and we're now going to be more, progressive even economically if this is in support of families.
Right.
But where, you really get down to brass tacks and policies, the Republicans are still often governed by these same old, tired free market economic, supply side economic ideas, like what Crapo's been pushing. But more than that, they still tend to be governed by the kinds of things Chuck Grassley said, that ultimately, if this helps Biden, we're not going to do it, irrespective of what it means for kids and families.
Yeah, I mean, we've missed a point where actually governing and taking care of the citizens is the priority of the parties, right? This part, the Republican Party specifically, and where it goes. And it's funny, I think there was a John Oliver piece about that. It's like, or was it? It was, I forget. But one of their big points in this rant was the fact that the Republicans are much more obsessed with who should be taking things. I think I was John Oliver talking about Medicaid, Medicare. That the obsession is the obsession is making sure that people who don't, may not be eligible things, keeping them from getting it, as opposed to the people who are just taking things. And I think that's why the universal thing is food is so important. Why the tax thing is so important. They're just obsessed with making sure that someone, some weird single person, is cheating the system, right? And in the end, no policies that pass that helps any of you guys. Instead of helping millions, they're more obsessed with not helping a couple hundred, and it leads to bad. So I mean, and the broader implication of failing to pass where does it all these different things like we didn't even talk about paid family leave very much. We didn't talk about all those other things. What are the broad implications when they fail to pass these kinds of legislations? Like, what does it do for our country and our society and where we're going right now?
The first thing that comes to mind, Fred, I mean, for me, I've got 3 little kids at home.
Yeah.
And I think about just the stress of being a parent in America these days. I think about particularly people who don't have income security, might not even have food security.
Yeah.
When there's that kind of stress, that kind of precarity, kids feel that. That affects kids' emotional well-being. It affects their learning, not to mention parents' health and happiness and well-being. Yeah. So when I think about all these questions, like, we're thinking about stress, how stressful it is to raise a family, to be a kid, to be a parent in America these days. Yeah. And when I think about really wanting to invest in the well-being of American families, it's about creating those good economic foundations so people aren't living in that state of constant stress, where people have more time, where people have more freedom to connect, to lead happy lives. And that's what family values are about, my friend.
Right. And that's it. And it's that happiness, that joy, that is the promise of America, right? The promise of America is that, you can lead a better life. If you work hard, you can lead a better life. And it just takes a little bit of help. I think for me, I get upset because it's like, these aren't giant programs. These aren't handouts that they want to make you believe it is. It's this obsession with that you've got to pull yourself up your bootstraps, when other countries have figured out long ago that when we take care of the least of us, that the most of us get benefits from it, right? And I guess I get frustrated because we spend so much time trying to dissuade the least of us and hurt them, and instead of actually helping them. A perfect place for a break because we have more to talk about. So we've got 2 great sponsors this week, our friends at Eat Human and ZBiotics. So let's take a break and we'll come right back. Look, you follow the show for a while, I've been trying to exercise, get it more into my routine. It's so important. It gives you powerful cardiovascular benefits. But I'm not going to lie to you. It's been a challenge to find the energy without turning to more and more caffeine, be it my morning coffee or an afternoon Diet Coke. I knew that supporting my heart health and staying active shouldn't be as much of an uphill battle. We often think living a more heart-healthy life means making big, unsustainable changes. Well, with SuperBeets Heart Chews, you can get daily blood pressure support in just 2 tasty chews a day, and they even promote heart-healthy energy without the stimulants. Pair with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in SuperBeets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. Now look, as I mentioned, I used to rely on coffee for energy, but the jitters and crashes were just too much sometimes. SuperBeets Heart Chews give me the energy boost I need in the morning, and I stay focused and productive all day long. Plus, honestly, they kind of taste great. They really do. Double your potential with SuperBeets Heart Chews. Now, get a 30-day supply of SuperBeets Heart Chews on all bundles and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using code FRED. That's getsuperbeets.com, code FRED. Thanks for sponsoring the show, SuperBeets. We appreciate you. Hey, let's face it. After a night out with drinks, I do not bounce back the way I used to when I was in my 20s as a young officer in the United States Army, full of strength, where we drink all night, then go working out the next morning. And lately, it's been not as easy since I'm a grandpa now. That is until I found ZBiotics pre-alcohol. Now, pre-alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by a PhD scientist to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted to a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Now, pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make your ZBiotics your first drink of the night, then drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Look, I won't lie. I don't hit the clubs anymore. I'm not that guy. But what I do is I take my partner and we go to outdoor concerts here in our town. We will sit down in the heat of the sun in the summer. We'll drink wine. We'll drink beer. And it kind of sneaks up on you. And the next thing you know, you're feeling a little bit under the weather. So I decided to give ZBiotics pre-alcohol a shot. And man, what a difference. Believe me, it is the real deal. So for vacations, weddings, birthdays, reunions, there's so much going on. Get the most out of your summer plans by stocking up on pre-alcohol now. So it's easy. Go to zbiotics.com/Fred to get 15% off your first order when you use Fred at your checkout. Pre-alcohol is back with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. So I'm going to go back to it again. Just make sure it's clear. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/Fred. Use the code FRED, F-R-E-D, at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, as always, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode and for the good times you help me continue to have. So a lot to talk about there. And we're talking about families. We're talking about the impact it has on the larger country going forward. I think we talk about the political record. Let's talk about the rhetoric a little bit, though. I mean, I do find it really off-putting. I mean, we keep teasing that they're weird, right? The weird rhetoric around must have babies, that only people who have babies matter. Have you had a chance to look at this idea? They're throwing ideas around, like, we actually have a state Senate candidate here in Missouri. His idea is that people with 3 or more children specifically wouldn't have to pay property taxes. Not 1, not 2, but 3, to get out of property taxes. I mean, these are some weird, I mean, weird is the only word I come up with when I hear rhetoric like that. I mean, there's no basis in policy, is there? It's just freaking weird, right?
I mean, you mentioned the rhetoric, the weird rhetoric.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is just that J.D. Vance is describing something really that at a policy level is sensible to CTC with the weirdest possible rhetoric. I mean, he's saying like people without kids should pay more. I mean, that's one way to frame it, I guess. Another way to frame it is if you have kids, you get a tax credit.
Right.
But it's almost, it sounds like just like he misspoke. But in a way, it's not. It's like he has a punitive kind of way of thinking about this. Like we need to scold people to live a certain way, as opposed to help out parents.
Yeah.
So
it's hugely it's off-putting, but it's also we always talk about politics as a game of addition, right? You want to add more people to your coalition, but that approach of rhetoric is very off-putting, and it's a subtraction, right? Because if you saw the backlash was like, well, what if I can't have children? So I don't get, you know what I mean? What if I decide not to have children? You do get into a weird place where the government is dictating these things as opposed to supporting them, right? And so I do think you see that difference in the Democratic approach, don't you?
For sure. And I think Walz handles this really well, just with the approach he takes to just saying, just stay out of people's business.
Right.
Mind your own damn business, which is interesting because at one level, Democrats are talking about what we can do together as a society. We're talking about how we come together and solve, collective action problems as a society and, do big things and solve hard challenges. Yep. But on the other hand, there's a piece of this that's, let's not mingle in people's personal lives because politics is downstream of culture, and it's hard sometimes for politicians to come in and dictate what the culture should actually look like.
Man, I love that. That's exactly it. And it does get to the culture wars. I mean, we're seeing a backlash against it. I mean, I know here in Missouri, but I think you're seeing across the country, there is a backlash to the constant culture wars and then the lack of policy to back it up, right? There's, the trans. I mean, just this morning, we're recording on Wednesday, Trump went on Fox and Friends, talk about how Walz is big on the transgender. He's real big on great, it's like, okay, again, why does this need to be government policy? And I think so. If you're talking about the Harris-Walz campaign, what would you say? I mean, as they go forward, how should they what would you recommend they shape their message? What do you think is the winning message to talk about our families and the way we should be supporting them?
I think just the way J.D. Vance has been saying, we're the pro-family party, we're the pro-parents party, we're the pro-kids party. I think the Harris-Walz campaign needs to be throwing that back on the Republicans and saying, all right, you want to claim this mantle? Show us what you're actually going to do about it.
Right.
Because they're not willing to actually promote paid family leave. But they've already clearly shown that J.D. Vance won't even show up for a vote on the child tax credit after he accuses Democrats of not supporting it.
Yep.
These kinds of policies, you got to back it up.
Right. Otherwise, it is just dictatorial type power. Well, that's fantastic. And shifting to something else, you did write recently about, I really enjoyed it, the faith in institutions, based on some polls and a colleague and you did it. And as we go into this, and that kind of goes into this as well, I think it does layer into the conversation about government family policies as well as trust in the institutions of the government in general to actually implement policies that make it different for Americans. You guys found that there's really a low trust in our institutions right now, isn't there?
There really is. I mean, every major polling organization has found that levels of trust in every institution, essentially in this country, the media, the government, federal agencies, courts, even the military, increasingly, people have less trust in institutions. Yeah. This is something that's been declining really since the 60s and 70s. And we've got this situation in politics now, Fred, where, Biden and Harris and other Democrats are the ones who are standing up for institutions. They're saying, as I was mentioning before, let's come together. Let's build a good economy. Let's heal the environment. Let's defend democracy, the rule of law, stand up for our allies.
Yeah.
These are all issues of trust in institutions. These are all issues about coming together to fix and defend the institutions. So the big question I've been looking at, Fred, is how Republicans have this strategic advantage right now in the age of distrust. This kind of atomized, individual-oriented society, that's an easier sell than saying, let's come together to do big things. And, typically you had the left pointing fingers at big business and the right pointing fingers at big government. But these days you have you have conservatives not only attacking government, but attacking big tech, attacking quote unquote woke capitalism. So the Republicans are trying to position themselves as the anti-institutions party, which is an advantageous strategic position. And this is an issue that Democrats need to deal with.
It's easy to be against instead of being for, right? I mean, that's the easy position to be in and all that. But I guess the question then is, how do you restore those trust? I mean, what is the path to start restoring? Because I think one of the criticisms I've had for the Biden administration, and I've gotten beaten up for it, is that and I think he's changed his mind, but when he came into office, there was this belief, I think, in the White House and the administration that if we just be normal, if we return to quote normal, again, with institutions and like, let's talk about Pete, the transportation part, just doing the right thing, that would be enough. But it also feels something like 3 years later that maybe it's not, that just being normal is enough. You actually have to tighten the institutions, don't you?
Well, this is where I'm sometimes skeptical of the whole, just call them weird kind of strategy. Okay. I mean, I think Tim Walz can pull it off really well because he's just such a down-home, good, solid, dependable guy. But, it's not enough to just say, let's return to normality.
Right.
It's not enough to say, let's just build a little bit more trust in the institutions. We've got big problems. We're dealing with big problems as a society we need to fix. And one of those problems is the underlying trust that allows us to do the work that we need to do together.
Yeah.
So I don't have any easy answers to your questions. I've been working with some polling, working with some focus groups, and not just on rhetoric, not just on communications, but really understanding what policies can break through. One piece of it is, how do you not just say, let's address climate change, let's repair the healthcare system, but how do you call out the corruption, that's undermining progress in those things? One big thing though that's coming up for me in my research on this is the importance of being willing to make a break from the past. In a way, how politicians apologize. One thing that's been really interesting about Walz is he said recently, in almost apologetic terms that in the past he was supportive of the NRA. And, over recent years and seeing all that they've done, he said, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I can't support the NRA anymore. I'm making a break from that past. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because if you look at where people see Trump as authentic these days, they'll often look at his ability to, look back at what the Republican Party has done and throw him under the bus for the Iraq War or throw him under the bus for NAFTA in a way that you just typically don't see Democrats doing. So it's important that I think politicians, in order to build trust, are able to say, I was wrong in the past, my party was wrong in the past, and here's why I'm going to do something different now.
That's a totally different approach to politics than we're used to, right? And especially on the Republican side, they don't apologize. I know that from having worked with a few of them over the years, and then before I became a Democrat consultant, and it is a very different approach. And that, I think, is part of the charm of Tim. I just saw last night, Waltz, I guess CNN was running a clip where during the riots, unfortunately, in Minneapolis, the CNN crew got roughed up. I mean, the governor himself said, we screwed up. We did that wrong. Our job is to make sure you had the freedom to do your jobs. And what was fascinating to me was CNN actually ran the clip of him talking to the reporter and made to say, this is who he is. This is a guy who takes responsibility for mistakes, owns them as the buck stops here kind of guy. And like you said, that is really unusual in today's politics. And to see him on the major ticket is really remarkable. And it does bode well. I mean, so where do you see it going from here? I mean, do you think that the Harris-Walz campaign, as their path goes forward, both in the family policy and the institutional policies, those need to go, do you see a path forward for them? Do you see hope in that? I mean, like many of us do see hope right now.
I think I've seen some commentary this morning that part of the reason that Harris chose Walz, wasn't just personal rapport, it wasn't just his communication skills, his rhetoric, the whole weird thing. It's really it's been his focus on what you asked about at the beginning of the conversation, Fred, the care economy. These basic issues of, the affordability of childcare in school. Of course, this comes down to questions like the affordability of access to medicines and housing too, and these kinds of questions. Yeah. But he's focused on these issues like food, nutrition, paid family leave, getting back to the basics of what it means to lead a decent life. And that's where I see this campaign going. Trump is just going to be out there, and Vance is going to be out there, yelling about culture war issues like you were talking about before. And I think where Harris and Walz go is just steer away from that and focus on the basics of what it means to lead a more decent life. Like we were talking about before, to lead a life with less stress.
Yeah, and more opportunity, right? And raising kids in a happier thing. I think that's why so many people latched onto it. And I keep telling people, repeatedly, don't dismiss this idea. I actually wrote a piece yesterday on Twitter, and I should probably put in my Substack of don't dismiss the vibes, right? That America's tired after 9 years of almost constant anger and fighting. The fact that the Harris and now Walz campaigns come out saying, no, it's okay to be happy. It's okay to be joyful, because in the end, that's the promise of America, right? It's it's in our founding documents that lead a happier. Yeah, the pursuit of happiness is literally one of the bases of this nation. The pursuit of happiness is right there, and to have a presidential campaign that says, yeah, we should be happy, we should be pursuing that. And of course, there's the old political adage that the happy campaign is the winning campaign. It's a weird thing to put into a conversation about politics, but it is true. I think you're right. I think if we show that we are on a path to provide policies that lead to the actual fulfillment of the pursuit of happiness, and like you said, our opponents aren't doing that, are they?
Fred, I think that's a really insightful point. I mean, the way Reagan was able to win landslide elections was morning in America. Right. He was the happy warrior, who made some, I think, regrettable changes in the economy, but he did it with a smile and he did it with a good demeanor, and I see, just yesterday, Waltz talking about bringing back the joy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too that you say that, because Vance has been, as part of the whole cat ladies line of argument, has been saying conservatives are just happier. Conservatives who are having kids, and living with a sense of purpose, and, as he's describing it, more of a moral fiber, are happier and leading more fulfilling lives. And when I talk with a lot of my progressive friends, this really gets to some underlying issues. A lot of, good progressive activists I know who are really doing the Lord's work on environment and poverty and everything are stressed out right now, aren't so happy right now because they're looking, look at what's happening around the world. Look at what's happening in our own country.
Yep.
So it's almost like, how do we be happy warriors? How do we stand up for what's right? How do we take a clear look at what's wrong in the world and still be happy despite having all the facts?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is, to your question about where the campaign goes, beyond policy, beyond the agenda, I think a big part of it is going to be about this kind of posture, is going to be about this kind of way of being. Can we be joyful?
Yep.
And still address what needs to be addressed in the world?
Well, I think it's a great place to go. Yeah, obviously, I'm tired of it. I've had a number of, I work on campaigns and some other work, and I've told some of my colleagues, like, it's maybe it's time to stop, and really focus on, what makes things better and what the policies will make things better and how we do it and how we bring everybody along. It really does go back to that idea, the two differences in the make America great again, or America is great, but together we can make it better. I think that's where we're going. I think that's the promise of America is, look, we're not perfect, but we've made progress slowly but surely over 200 plus years. Now, where do we go next together? So, Justin, it's a great place to talk. Where do people find you, my friend? Where can they find your stuff? Where can they find your work? Or where's the best place to hunt you down?
I'm a senior advisor at the Center for Economic and Policy Research. I'm also running a new operation called Rebuild Democracy that's working on some of these trust issues.
Love it.
And I'm not super active on social media. I wrote a book actually about the psychology and the power of silence. So I'm kind of would be a weird voice for social media, but I do post on LinkedIn.
Good, LinkedIn it is.
I'm on the Center for Economic and Policy Research site as well, and and write for the Washington Post at times, and just wrote for LA Times, as you mentioned, different papers.
Love it. Well, we'll hunt you down one way or another, man. I really appreciate your time. I'm so glad we connected, and fantastic insight today. Appreciate it.
Fred, really good to be with you. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Fascinating conversation. A little bit different than our usual conversations, but I really want to talk about, what does it mean? What does it mean to be pro-family? It's more than just the abortion issue. It is the issue of, what do we do after they're born? And we've talked about it for a long time, that Republicans are consistently choosing a path that doesn't actually support the child once they're born. And we even talk about gun policy, where the number one killer of children in our country are guns, and we refuse to acknowledge that. We refuse to discuss it. And the same people who are saying, oh, transgender surgery, they're hurting children, when you're talking about like 0.003% ever, but the number one killer of children's guns, we're not even allowed to talk about that. So there are very different approaches to the idea. Where you start, the kernel of the idea is being pro-family, and where you go from there, as the tree descends from there, is very different between the two parties right now. And it's never been more stark when you see at the beginning of the show that discussion from Tim Walz about how they struggled to have children and used IVF to get it. That struggle, in most cases, would be illegal under a Republican regime that's coming in. So very interesting conversation. I want to touch briefly, too, about couches. Now, I know it's a weird topic, but hey, it's come up in the zeitgeist, if you will. I've seen some pretty good funny jokes about it. But, I've also seen some poo-pooing and some complaining about it. Here's why I bring it up, because this is from Tim Walz's actual announcement. And I love this clip, but I also love, you got to watch Vice President Harris's face as Tim does this. But here's a clip from Tuesday's speech.
Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, JD studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is. And I gotta tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is, if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there?
So Everybody in the crowd knew what he meant by getting JD off the couch. And look, I've seen a lot of people who, especially the Democratic side, even the Republican side, using against us as, oh, it's just outrageous to make these jokes by the couch. It's totally fake story. Obviously, if you know the history of it, I think John Oliver, again, did a great piece about how it really was just a made up thing. Some guy sent a tweet out saying that on page whatever it was in his book, he talks about having sex on the couch. We'll leave it at that. It's not true. It's fake. Okay. But the thing is, it's also kind of funny. And if you look at, and it really makes people mad, I think sometimes. I get it. I get they're like, oh, but it's fake. I mean, you're just making up something fake. But what John Oliver made point so well was, okay, well, it just seems logical too that, you can't confirm he hasn't done these things because he's just so weird. And what Tim Walz always says, they're just weird. They are. They're kind of creepy and just weird, right? It's become a meme and funny because it highlights the weirdness. And also, let's be very honest, and this goes back to putting my Lincoln Project hat on again. There is a psychological warfare element to the modern political discussion that so many people who are political professionals, especially older political professionals or just older people, don't understand the psychological war element that we're into. It's incredibly frustrating to guys like me. I get it. I get it, especially from the Lincoln Project. If you guys remember, we did an ad talking about how much Brad Parscale was making from working for Trump as his campaign manager. The Washington Post confirmed later that the ad we did of Parscale throwing money around and showing his condos and his multiple cars, Trump actually walked into his office and asked him about how much money he was making because he didn't know. And before long, he fired his campaign manager. That's psychological warfare. Okay. And when your opponent is someone like Donald J. Trump, who is so thin-skinned, and J.D. Vance, who's obviously just as thin-skinned in his own way, when you're able to kind of get inside their head and cause them to have to react and defend, we're winning. And that's the key difference that you're seeing in the last 3 or 4 weeks. We have spent, I would argue, very comfortably saying, we've spent 9 years on defense. We really had. And nobody wants to admit that. But since Trump came down the escalator, he's been dictating the conversation. Okay? He talked about Mexicans being rapists. He talks about closing the border, all these different things. The Democrats are constantly reacting, and even when they have wins on their own, we're constantly reacting to this offensive comments and offensive operations from the Republican Party. And you can win on defense. You really can. Obviously, we did. Joe Biden won the election, all those things. But at some point, you've got to go on the offense to win. To actually defeat the opponent, the enemy, you've got to go on the offense. And this is a perfect example. Going back to the weirdness and the couch thing. Yes, of course the couch thing's fake. And of course it's a little bit crude. But in the end, it's such a psychological warfare element of our opponents that it just makes them insane. And that's okay. Okay? That's a good thing. Look, I get you don't want to be a part of it, whatever. But there's a real value for us to be inside their heads for once. For the first time ever, we've got them spinning their wheels trying to find ways to fight back. And the idea that someone would poo-poo a light, mediocre joke about J.D. Vance and couches, but comparing that to Trump consistently and constantly smearing people, coming up with disgusting nicknames from him, talk about sex, talking about blood pouring out of their eyes and whatever. I mean, the idea that anyone would try to say, oh, this is so bad, it's like Trump. Brother, it isn't even fucking close to anything Trump's doing. And certainly is nothing like his propaganda. You just look in the replies on my Twitter feed on any given moment and see the kind of shit being thrown at us. And then to turn around and go, oh, it's disgusting that we're talking about couches when it's fake. Are you fucking kidding me? Really? They call us pedos daily. Okay? Look at this woman who ran for Secretary of State in Missouri. She tried to trademark, Valentina Gomez tried to trademark the phrase, don't be weak and gay. She wanted to trademark that. A Republican candidate for office. And then we got people on our side and there's, oh, how dare they make jokes about the couch. Are you freaking kidding me with this stuff? We've got to go on the offense. So I'm very sorry that you don't like it. It's a bummer to you. Poo-poo all you want. But the fact is, we're not going to win. We're not going to defeat MAGA and Trump extremism without going on the offense. And part of going on the offense in this environment, in this communications environment, in a social media world is a psychological operations element that makes them have to answer stupid shit like, did J.D. Vance sleep with a couch? Welcome to the modern world. So that's all I'm going to say about couches. Look, you can get in the fight. We've been saying it. It's 90 days, folks. Tim Walz said it this week. You can do anything for 90 days. We're talking 3 months. You can 90 days. You can do anything. You've got to get in the fight. We have to take back this country in a direction where we can go forward together. Again, America is already great, but we can get better. And the only way to do that is to work together. And that's joyfully and happily and getting in the mission, getting in the fight. Call your local campaign. Call the party. Volunteer in the DNC website. Volunteer in the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz campaign site. Get in the fight. It's not tweeting and sending out videos, okay? I wish I was, it's doing more. It's being part of campaigns. It's volunteering for a campaign locally like I'm doing, actually. You can do it, but we all have to do it together because we will win. We are winning. You can see it now. The desperation, the stolen valor accusations, disgusting accusations about Tim Walz, which we will talk about. The disgusting, sexist, racist things being said about Kamala Harris. We will win because that is not who we are. But we will win only if we continue the fight. Don't believe the polls. We must win handily, and we must do it very, very aggressively. So with that, I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week.